There are just certain people that impact our lives, especially us in the media. There's just something about them. Maybe it's the way they conduct themselves, the way they race, the way they treat their family, the way they interact with others, their integrity, respect, you name it. And the more you watch these people, the more you want to know what makes them tick. So when the opportunity arose to interview this individual, we jumped at it so fast, you'd think we were part of the United States track and field team. Thanks for tuning in today for another new and exciting episode from Stock Car Facts, which we try to post every Tuesday at about noon. Or you can watch some of our previous episodes. Here at Stock Car Facts, we would really love to recreate the race day sights, smells, and sounds that we first experienced for ourselves in 1974 at Michigan International Speedway. But unfortunately, that's not possible here. However, we can do the next best thing in that we can share with you what happened at these events, and we can talk to those people who created those memories. Or, those facts. So we'd appreciate it if you sit back and relax and enjoy this latest episode today of Stock Car Facts with me, your host, Kevin Schwarzy. Oh, and by the way, later, you'll have a chance to comment on this content. And, if you haven't already, please hit the like button as well as the follow bell to be notified of brand new shows right here. And we'd appreciate it if you'd share this on all of your social media platforms. Thank you. Today on Stock Car Facts, this is part 3 of our interview with motorsports icon Dave Marcis. In this segment, he talks about Mark Donohue, the Matador secrets, an IndyCar driver, Osterlund, his time there, being stubborn, the number 2, relief driving, leaving Osterlund, the 1978 Atlanta race, his relationship with Dale Earnhardt, and RCR, and the 1981 Atlanta flip. We hope you enjoy this segment. I have to pick your brain on what kind of guy Mark Donohue was. He's always been so intriguing to me because he died. I was born in '67. To me, he's one of the first superstars, but he died in '75. So you can tell what an impact it was.
He was a great guy and a lot of fun to be around and work with. I mean, he was really educated in physics and things, and things that are being done actually in NASCAR today. We tested some of that type of stuff on the Matadors.
Wow.
When Mark was driving it at Daytona. He was forever trying to get that car soft, so that the aerodynamics and the wind
lower that car,
would push it down, get it lower to the ground. And one of the main problems that we had, that was a banjo chassis, a rear steer car. And Mark would get that car to go down so low at speed on the back straightaway that the bolt that holds the tie rod, the cross link on the steering box, would drag the nut, and the bolt was from the pit on the steering box. Yeah, and running without the tailpipes and all that kind of stuff. Mark had that stuff in his head, and we were testing that kind of stuff on that Matador.
But do you think that's also what kind of killed him? Because what I understand, they were trying to get that Formula One car to run better.
Right.
And what I understand, he got in the car to try to, how does it feel? What should we do?
He thought about racing. We could go eat supper. We'd go to the motel or whatever. When he was staying upstairs in the garage in Roger's shop, and I spent some nights up there with him. I slept on the couch. And he just talked about racing and that type of stuff and how to make the car better and be more competitive.
Because he had retired by the time he got in that Formula One car. He had quit driving for a couple of years.
And just like the disc brakes on the Matador, I mean, Mark put
disc brakes, right?
I know Bud Moore always said they had the first disc brakes. They did not have the first disc brakes. Maybe they did on the baby grand cars, but not on the stock cars. Mark Donohue engineered that set. Those were disc brakes off of a Lincoln, I think. And Mark engineered that whole thing, and other engineers at Penske Racing, and then when I drove the Matador at Darlington, we tested down there, and we were extremely competitive in the test. It looked like maybe we could win a race with the Matador. Gary Bentonhausen was driving one of the Indy cars. Went and ran a short track race at Syracuse, I believe it was. Was not supposed to do what Roger told him, no short track dirt or whatever, and got hurt.
And hurt himself real bad. Yeah.
So Roger said to me, I want you to run the Indy car at Ontario. And I said, Roger, I'm a stock car guy.
I don't know, sir. I don't want to tell you no, but
can win this. I think we can win this race. And well, it won't be no problem. We can get plenty of practice. We'll fly you back and forth with the Learjet and this and that. And I turned that deal down.
Wow.
And he put Mike Hiss in the car, and they won the IndyCar race at Ontario. Mike Hiss did.
Okay.
And we were running very, very good in the race at Darlington. We were in like the top three real late in the race, had a chance maybe. And I wore a right rear tire out, and we had to make an unscheduled pit stop. But I can't remember. We still had a good finish, but we had to do that unscheduled stop. But I had an opportunity there to drive the Indy car for Roger Penske in the Ontario race.
What could have been, huh?
Yeah.
Dave Marcis could have had an Indy win, too.
But
Wow.
I was just, I was a stock car guy, and to win a stock car race and then in the Matador yet too would have been quite an accomplishment.
Well, and like Richard Petty always said, and I know you admire Richard,
Oh, absolutely.
They had always asked him why he didn't run Indy, and he said, if you want to stay good in something, you just keep running that.
Right.
And so I totally
He's
understand.
proved his point.
He a little bit, and which he also proved his point in IROC too. It's,
right.
He had he never won an IROC race, and then he got hurt at Daytona, and he quit running until back in the early '90s.
Right.
And I don't blame him. I mean, he almost missed the 500 that year.
I was interested in Indy cars. I watched Indy cars. I always listened to the Indy 500, but my deal was stock cars.
Well, plus was the wives. I mean, I know that Bobby Allison drove for Mr. Penske the next year in '75 in IndyCar. And listening to Bobby, he talks about Judy was not happy. So did Helen have anything? Do you really want to go run those? I mean, or did she not have
I really don't remember if she did or not. I don't think so. I'm not sure about that.
Okay.
But I just thought we could win that race with that Matador at Darlington. We were competitive, and I thought I would be. Roger was sure that I could get plenty of sleep and plenty of rest back and forth with that in that airplane of his, and I wasn't so sure about that.
Well, you have to be able to sleep, sir. And running an IndyCar, I don't know.
Yeah, one other time, I don't remember where we were going, but he said, fly with us on the jet and we can talk on the way. No, you can't. Roger's on the telephone no matter where he's going the whole way. I don't remember what race that was, but...
Too funny. Oh, boy. Well, he's going to be, what, I believe 86, 87 now?
Yeah,
I
think he's terrific. Right up in there, yeah.
I mean, you guys all look, jeez.
But, I mean, he's a great guy. He's like I say, I didn't have to ask him for a salary. He called me up and said, I'll give you a salary. And you go pick out a car and tell him to send the invoice up here and we'll get her ordered. And he's a super man, super guy.
So when Mr. Osterlund bought the 2-car, were you part of the deal, or they just said, well, who are we going to get the drive? Oh, Dave's already here, let's hire Dave.
Well, when Osterlund and them called me to drive for him, I told them about the team. Roger told me, if you got somebody that wants you to drive and they're starting a new team or whatever, you have first chance to buy this team. Well, I didn't have no money to buy no team. Well, when Osterlund and them called me, I told him about that. He went up there and sat down, talked with Roger, bought the team. So then we put a deal together for me to drive the car. Roger also told them that Cam 2, the reason they had number 2 on the race car was because it was my number. I let them borrow the number and use it because of Cam 2.
Cam 2.
And Roger made that clear to them. So when I ended up quitting Osterlund at the end of the season, because I wasn't happy when they fired my crew chief, Dewey Livengood,
right,
with 3 races left on the schedule, running second in the points for a first-year team. Unheard of.
You and Benny were...
They shot themselves in the foot on that deal. But anyhow, that's beside the point. But when the next season started, I told Helen, I said, I'm going back on my own because here I am, had this kind of a year, and now I don't have a ride again. You know, I quit the team, and I said, I'm just going to go back on my own. It's hard. I know it ain't easy, but I know where I'm going. I got a job. Yeah. And I guess that's why people called me stubborn. Maybe I could have found another ride. I guess I don't know. But anyhow, so then when it come time to start the next season, Riverside was always our first race. When I got my race car ready and then they called NASCAR, I want my number 2 on the car. They said it was Osterlund's number. I said, it's not Osterlund's number. It's my number. Verify it with Roger Penske. I was told by Les Richter, just letter your car up and bring it to Riverside and we'll get it straightened out. Well, I knew better.
You knew better, exactly.
Because when I got there, Osterlund's a California businessman. Who's going to end up with number 2?
And who's got more?
So, number 71 then was available because Jim Stacy didn't use it. So I...
but you went with 02 first, didn't you? For a few races in 79.
Maybe I did.
I think, didn't you? And then later in the year went to 71, I think?
That could be because then 71 maybe came available.
Yeah. Okay.
That's possible. I don't remember that. But anyhow, I didn't want to be involved in an argument or a battle with NASCAR, with Osterlund. But Roger Penske could have come and verified it and straightened it out. But I just decided don't get involved in it. The heck with it.
You got enough other irons in the fire.
I was so busy trying to get a new team started with no money. That ain't easy.
and I'm sorry I skipped over your USAC win, your USAC stock car win at MIS, Michigan International Speedway. For you new fans, we call it the old timers call it MIS, but yeah.
That's when they ran in those days, they ran the Indy car and the stock cars, and I think they were called the Twin 250s.
Yep.
If I remember
exactly
right. I think Tom Sneva might have been in the Indy car with Norton sponsorship, I believe.
And Mr. Penske's car.
Stock car.
Yeah. So he had a great day at his track.
Yeah, and Roger's track, yeah.
And if I'm not mistaken, you dominated that race too.
Yeah.
If I remember right.
Yeah, and I think
car.
Robert Yates built that engine for Roger. I think that was a Yates engine, I believe.
Oh, wow. Okay.
I'm not 100% sure about that, but...
Come on, admit it. That was easy. I mean, it's not easy to win races, but I'm sure it was, you're in a Roger Penske car, I mean, by 77, you still had good competitors, but, you guys were leaving. Butch, I think Butch had come to NASCAR by then, hadn't he, if I'm not mistaken?
Yeah, I think so.
Maybe Bobby was in the field because, he always came and ran stuff.
Yeah.
Jack wasn't running the full deal anymore. So that must have been pretty... I'm in Roger Penske stuff. I'm going to win this. Yeah. You had to have known that, I'm sure. Yeah. You had all that experience at MIS and good stuff, and so.
Yeah, it was. It was a neat deal. It really was. So, and when did Mark win the Riverside race?
73.
73.
January 73.
So, and I won that USAC race in
77.
Okay, so actually Mark won the first stock car race for Roger then, but it was a road course.
Yeah, it was a road. You won the first
for me for on the oval track.
Yeah, yeah. Well, like I say, you won them everywhere. Martinsville, Richmond, MIS. Intermediates. What they're all screaming about now. Aero and all this kind of stuff. Which, okay, it does play a factor. Yeah. You got Talladega. You got Atlanta. You got quite a resume there.
I think every time I got in somebody's car to drive relief for them, I was competitive with the race car.
You were.
I drove Richard's car at Darlington.
Yes, you did.
And got the car back up front. I dropped out of that race, and I had actually put Richard in the wall earlier in the race. Not intentionally.
Right.
He got on the outside of me in the second turn, and I just ran him up high, and he got into the wall. I didn't even know he was out there yet. And so when I dropped out of the race, Dale Inman come and said, "You get your butt over here in the pits."
Better than Maurice coming over there.
Yeah, he said, "You bent the race car up, and Richard can't drive it anymore. He's wore out. You get over here, you're getting in it." So he grabbed me, and they threw me in the car, and Dale got the front end straightened out, but I got the car back up front again.
I think you're running third.
Then it rained, and after the rain, the car was just too tight. We couldn't really go that good.
I think you
mean, we finished the race. We finished okay, but. And then I drove the Woods Brothers car one time, relief for Donnie Allison at Atlanta.
You're right. You did. I forgot about that.
And my instructions from Leonard Wood when I got in that car was, we need to finish this race. Don't do anything foolish. You don't got to prove nothing to nobody. Just don't wreck the car and finish the race. So they were happy with the job I done for them.
So the list would be short of who you didn't drive for.
Yeah.
Sounds
so,
like.
I mean, and there were some opportunities along the way to get with other teams, but they didn't run all the races. And to make a living, I needed to run. I wanted to run all the races.
I'm going to go back to Osterlund, and I could have sworn you said this. And okay, YouTube land and whatever land, please don't be offended. I believe this is what Dave said when he left Osterlund. There's too many Polacks on that team. Did you say that?
Probably did, because of Roland Wolodyka.
Roland Wolodyka. I thought I'd let you bring him up.
But
I think
I don't really know. They still would never ever give me a reason for firing Dewey. A first-year team, second in the points, 3 races left. Rockingham, Atlanta, and Ontario, run good, and they fired.
You still had a shot at it.
Yeah, and
you and Benny at the beginning of the year were neck and neck for the points.
I think the deal was, if I look back at it now, they had a deal working with Dale, which I didn't know anything about. When I quit that team in Atlanta, I was just mad about them firing Dewey. Didn't have nothing to do with the race car or anything. I was just upset, and because it wasn't right.
Right.
And I think Roland wanted to take credit for everything the rest of the year in them last 2 or 3 races. I really don't know that to be true or false. That's my opinion, but it is what it is. But
well, I think it takes. You've got the biggest set of whatevers. You know what I'm trying to say, or whatever. To admit, you admitted later that you could have tried harder in Atlanta. Now most people are going to admit that. And your explanation, well, you tell it.
Well, the deal was, I actually backed off the throttle and let, I thought at the time, Richard Petty win the race. Richard and I were running side by side. I could get by Richard. I'd done it 3-4 times. You can look at if there's films of that race. I don't know whether there is or not. I don't think there is. But in the 4th turn, I let Richard crawl up there and I eased off a little bit and let Richard, I thought at the time, win the race. 10 o'clock that night, Brian France decided Donnie Allison won the race. I still don't believe it. Donnie, I'm friends with Donnie. Donnie says it. He tells people that I don't believe it.
He does.
But in those days, on the restarts, the cars that were down a lap always started on the inside of the front row, and all the cars that were down laps are on the inside row.
Yep.
The other cars were on the outside row. When that restart started, Donnie was up front on the inside row.
And
that's right.
That helped him. Yeah.
Exactly right, but they never made the lap up. So
not only that, you guys were not on the winner's circle plan yet.
That's right. So and I was so upset over the deal. I did not want to put Osterlund Racing on the winner's circle, which would have, I think, meant $2,500 per race for them the next year.
Yeah.
So,
well,
it is what it is. You know, we all make mistakes. I should have went on and tried to win the race, I guess, for my own record. But hindsight's 20/20, and yes, I admit it. But there's
most people don't. Most people don't. Yeah. Well, and you didn't admit it at the time, if I'm not mistaken. You admitted it later. Did you admit it at the time?
I think I did. Yeah.
Either way, whether you admit it at the time or not.
The truth, I'm pretty good at telling the truth. I figure.
That's my point. Most people won't admit that.
Right.
They'll just say the corporate line and blah blah blah. You know.
Right.
Well, that's, and I'm sure Dale Earnhardt got back to him somehow. And you guys still became great friends.
Yep.
It's, you know,
it's because at Martinsville.
When you tugged on Superman's cape.
Yeah. When Dale was in their car and I was back in my own, he kept hammering on me and I got mad and spun him up.
Yes, you did.
And he wouldn't talk to me.
That was then his year that he won the title.
Yep.
That really hurt him.
Yeah, he still won the race at Martinsville, even
did.
after I spun him off.
He did.
But he was mad at me and he wouldn't talk to me, and I guess it took about 2 months. And he come up to me and grabbed me around the neck, that big smile that he always had. And he says, "You know that deal with Martinsville?" I said, "Yes, sir." He said, "I had that coming." He said, "My daddy always told me if you got a problem, don't carry it down the road, handle it." He said, "You had a problem and you handled it."
So then now we're into 1981, and now we're downsizing the cars. For an independent team like yours, that had to be pretty hard to have to replace everything.
Yeah, it was, but Richard Childers and them shortened up one car for me.
Well, they wiped that one out with Greg Sachs.
Yeah,
So
Ronnie Grayson and was working for Richard, and they made a fixture, and that helped me out and got me going with a race car. So,
well, you had the Oldsmobile Cutlass.
Yes.
You were one of the few that had one of those.
Yep.
So it was kind of, different, and you actually ran that for quite a while.
Well, yeah,
and you had the Buick and the
car a couple of years, but that was when we went through that phase of the Buick, the Chevrolet, the Oldsmobile. All the back glasses were straight back glass. And all them cars were so bad loose; they were so difficult to drive, and there just was no air following that body. When it left that back glass, it just took off. I guess from the pressure from the spoiler forward, maybe was pushing it up in the air. What it wasn't hitting that spoiler, and they were a handful. Those cars, those bodies, is what actually brought the Laughlin Racing Products front steer car more so into the sport.
Okay.
It seemed like the front steer car was more suitable to drive with that back window and stuff for some reason. They were tighter or something than a banjo chassis.
Well, everybody ran around talking about, Bobby and the Le Mans, and, credit to him. But there were guys that brought Malibus out, too. Roger Hamby had one, and you had one on the
I
short
had a
tracks.
Malibu. I won the pole with it at North Wilkesboro.
Yes, you did. Yes, you did. But do you think that handling issue with that Olds, because you had that where you spun off at Atlanta and hit those tires and ended up upside down.
Yep.
Is that because of the handling?
Those cars were loose, but I think what else happened in that situation? I don't really remember. Them cars were just hard. They were a handful for everybody.
Right.
Pearson hated them. Everybody did. They were a handful.
Yeah, he lost.
And NASCAR was working on a lot of stuff, letting us try this, letting us try that. But in the meantime, the cars with the slope roof and the Ford and them people were arguing with NASCAR. Hey, you're letting them do everything, but
everybody runs manufacturer does that. When you let them do that, when you let them do that.
Human nature.
Right. Well, now what have they got? Now you got to buy everything off of NASCAR, so that's the other way. But that's another show. So
we don't need to go there.
No.
Thank you. Boy, what a big word. Except when you compare it to what you folks have done for this channel, to me, it pales in comparison. A like, a comment, a share, a subscription, even sending a few bucks. Trust me, we won't let you down. We really appreciate you reaching out and helping this channel. Thanks for watching. Tune in next week as Dave Marcis shares a hilarious story between he and former crew chief, the late Harry Hyde, right before a qualifying session.
He was upset with me. He was gone for about almost an hour, and when he come back, then it was to get the cars through inspection and qualify. He walked up to me and poked me in the chest, and he said, "I'm going to tell you something, Dave Marcis." I said, "What's that?" He said, "I am taking the spoiler off that car for you," and he's poking me in the chest. But he said, "I want to just let you know something." He said, "Columbus didn't know where the hell he was going to land when he took off either."